Hello, Wealth Builders. You're listening to Wealth Building with Options. Here's your host, Dan Passarelli.
Hey, how are you feeling today? All right. I hope you're feeling great. I know I'm feeling great because you know what? I'm super excited because this is the first actual proper episode of our show. And you know what? I'm really excited about it. It has been a long time in the making. A really long time. I've thought about it for, a good year, and then finally decided to break down and write the book. And I kind of wanted to wait until I had a contract all lined up before I started the podcast. And it's a much longer process than you could possibly even imagine. So I just decided, hey, what the heck? Let's just get this thing off the ground. Let's get rolling. Now, in the process of looking for a publisher, this is the third book that I've done. I decided to, hey, shop it around a little bit, right? And there was a publisher that I sent it to, and, they all have their different processes. Some of them you have to fill out a certain form, and some of them you just email them and say, hey, what do you think? And some of them you have to have an agent, and it's everything's different, right? But there was this one where they do peer reviews, and I was like, peer reviews, that's kind of strange. I kind of know everybody in the industry. Is it going to be somebody I know? Or at least I know a lot of people in the industry. So I thought, that could be kind of awkward. But anyway, they sent it out to a couple people and they gave feedback. And it was actually pretty good feedback overall. Funny, I don't really even know who the people are who gave the feedback. So, hey, if you're listening, thank you very much for giving me good feedback. And I actually did make a couple of changes to the outline. And the one thing that the one guy said was calling this book Build Consistent Wealth with Options. Why don't you start out making the case for building wealth? What's the whole point? And I kind of thought, well, you know what? You got a pretty good point there. If the whole point of the book is to build consistent wealth with options, we should really talk about, building wealth, especially consistently. So I thought that would be a good thing to start out our episode with, just to predicate everything we're talking about. Because otherwise, why would we talk about anything? We got to know why we're talking about it. So there's a lot around this idea of the case for why you'd want to build consistent wealth. And to me, it kind of starts with the obvious. It's always better to have money than not. So sure, they say money is the root of all evil. And I can truly say that that's a bunch of crap. I mean, sure. I have known people in my life who got really wealthy and became arrogant or mean or miserly or miserable or whatever. And I also know people who's had struggles as being have-nots, if you will. And that turned them bitter, maybe even caused them to do some unsavory things. But you know what? In my experience, most of the time, those are fleeting behaviors. That's not the norm. I think both of those extremes are rare cases. I will honestly say, I do not believe there's a difference in the character of a person relative to their wealth. In either direction, really wealthy or really poor. I know a lot of wealthy people who are the kindest people you will ever meet. And I've met some who are real jerks too. And I've met a lot of people in my life who are broke as a joke, who are also the nicest people you'll ever meet, as well as some who are also complete jerks. But one thing I do know is it's better to have more money than less money. And this is one of the prime assumptions of classical economists. the assumption of rational behavior. Like, they always start out with, here are our assumptions. And one of them is just market participants have rational behavior. And part of that is that market participants prefer more money to less, or act in self-interest to make a profit. And sure, let's be fair, a lot of the classical economist arguments have been, sort of debunked by behavioral economists over the past decade or so, or two, or whatever. But I'll tell you what, that's one assumption that ought to stick for anybody who is on this journey of deciding to be a self-directed trader or investor. You're not in this to try and lose money, or you're not in this because you don't care if you win or lose. You have an objective. Preferring more money to less isn't greed, it's rationality. Like, frankly, if you get more money, you don't have to keep it. But once you have it, if you don't want to keep it, now you actually have something bigger than money, something more valuable than money. You have the ability to give it to people or organizations that can do good with it, whether that's religious organization, church or synagogue or whatever it is, or charity or medical research or whatever. That is like a superhero power, right? Money is beneficial in that way. And we need money to survive. If you're young and you have healthy parents and you are fortunate, you probably don't know yet, but when people get toward like the later years of their lives, it can require massive amounts of capital. Speaking as an American, or I probably just like a Western civilizationer, mostly American, I guess, the healthcare costs can be much bigger than you would imagine. As far as like home health care and, nurses coming to the house to care for your elderly parents, or elderly people are living in care facilities, that kind of thing, it is probably orders of magnitude more expensive than people who haven't gone through this can even fathom. It's crazy, man. So, yeah, wow, way to bring down the room, Dan. Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's not just, oh, look at me, I've got a lot of money. That's not the objective here. There are things that you do with it, and there are things that you have to do with it as life progresses. And, a lot of them are just so much more valuable than this store of wealth we call the dollar. For Americans anyway, the pound for Brits, euro for a lot of Europeans, and so on. The things that we get with this store of wealth, those are the things of value. The thing is, whenever you spend money, you're arguably actually investing it, not spending it, right? You're giving this thing that has some defined, agreed upon value in society, money, and getting something you think is worth more than that. And maybe in a small case, it's a meal or a vacation or a college degree or a home or your dream home or an investment property. Everyone has their own dreams and needs and obligations and opportunities. And those are the important things in life that this tool we call money can help you achieve. So I start out some of my classes that I teach through Market Taker mentoring, and I ask this question that I was asked once a long time ago. So when I was a floor trader, a market maker on the floor of the Chicago Board Options Exchange. My ultimate boss, the owner of the company, or I would say my backer. It's just that we had a relationship business-wise where he had a company and I was technically his employee, but basically he's my backer, is a guy named Steve Fawcett, who is very famous as not just a trader, but also an adventurer. Tried to fly around the world in a hot air balloon with Richard Branson to be the first people in the world to do that. I don't recall if he actually did that, but he held a bunch of world records. But needless to say, by the time I met him, he was a super successful trader. And at one point when I was trading for him, he took all of his traders out to dinner, all of his market makers. And we were having dinner and we're having cocktails. And as you can imagine, with traders, So anyway, after dinner, he stood up and it's kind of like, oh, he's going to make a toast. And he said, I want you to think about something. I'm kind of paraphrasing. This is like, 20 years ago or something. But he said, I want you to think about something. Why do you trade? Why are you a trader? As a floor trader, you stand on your feet all day. By the end of the day, your back hurts. You have people yelling in your ear, getting their spit on you when they shout. Why do you go through all this? It can be stressful sometimes. What is your reason? Because here's the thing. It's really never about money. It's not. It's about those important things in life. The things that you can take this store of wealth and invest into these things because those things are more valuable than this currency, right? And so I ask you, what are the things that are important to you that this tool called money or wealth can help you get or achieve? What are those things? Like really, really take a minute and think about it, okay? As you can see, this is one of the less hands-on technical episodes, but arguably maybe this is one of the most important episodes. What are the things that are important to you that this tool, money, wealth, can help you get or achieve? For you, is it financial security? Is it securing your retirement? Or maybe your early retirement? Maybe that's your goal. Or maybe it's paying for college that's coming up, or your student loans they already owe. Maybe paying for your kids' college or your grandkids' college. Maybe your jam is travel or concerts. Maybe it's things that you collect, like classic cars or sports memorabilia or whatever it is. Maybe it's, like I mentioned before, taking care of elderly parents or special needs children or, any children for that matter. What is it that's important to you, right? I think it's important to have your own answer. Because why are we doing this? Why are you listening to this? Why do you want to be a better investor and to build wealth consistently and faster? It's fun. It's interesting. It's like this puzzle that we solve, and solving puzzles is fun to humans' brains. But that's not the main reason. It's actually really good if you enjoy it because you'll want to continue doing it. But you have your own profound reason. What is it? And to be clear, I'm talking about, like I said, the deep-seated stuff, the important things. And that's why we need wealth and not just money. I was talking with my son over the holidays. He lives out in San Francisco now doing some medical research. We're very proud of him. And he came home for Christmas and New Year's. He asked how the book was coming along. And I told him, basically the same story I told you earlier. Yeah, I wrote the first chapter. The outline was sent out for peer review, and one person suggested I start out by making the case for wealth, so that's what chapter 1 is about. And he said very decisively, yeah, that makes total sense. And like the clarity and confidence he had led me to ask him, well, why do you say that? I mean, I have my reason, but I was curious why he thought so. He said, these days we have this gambling culture. Sports betting is really common now. Everybody bets on sports. Also, people are betting on like meme stocks, NFTs, cryptos, and I don't remember if he mentioned all that or what, but that's the idea. And he also said some people even gamble on the stock market with options. But what you're talking about, and that's him talking about what he knows I'm writing about. What you're talking about is something different. It really is about building wealth. And I was like, yeah, that's it, isn't it? When I was talking about exchanging money for things as basically always being an investment earlier, an investment where it's something that's worth more than the store of wealth that we call money or currency is to you, like that is wealth, right? Arguably, you never can spend money. When you're taking money and exchanging it for something more valuable to you, that's investing. And people who are smart and think about their money as a store of wealth, that's really what you're doing, no matter what you spend it on. That, by definition, is investing. By trying to make a quick buck, well, that isn't building wealth. That tends to be sort of easy come, easy go type money. What I'm talking about today and in the book is not that kind of gambling. And I mean, in a way, I say it's not that kind of gambling because in a way, it sort of still is gambling in a way. Oh boy, sorry to throw a wrench in things here, but let me explain. Building wealth so that you can move that temporary store of wealth to invest in things that are important to you. That's what I'm talking about. And it's not that it comes from not that it necessarily comes from blood, sweat, and tears. That's not the difference between building wealth and gambling. In fact, so I think it's important to try not to spend too much blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, I grew up in a working class family, middle class, upper middle class, whatever it is called, I'm not sure. But I learned early on to work hard. And I'm glad I got that lesson, but it's a limited lesson. And in some ways, it limited me. Later in life, I learned to work smarter, not harder. Like that's using leverage in building wealth, leveraging our efforts by using our brain. We could move a pile of rocks by carrying one rock at a time, or we could put them all in a cart and wheel them to the new location and dump them out. This is different from trying to avoid effort, right? It's doing the effort more efficiently, more effectively, smarter. And in that regard, that's how this is different from what most people call gambling. It's not throwing the dice and hoping for a 7. If you've ever been to a casino and watched a typical person win a bunch of money, you've probably also seen what tends to happen next. That would be one of two things. Either they go on to lose said money, or they go on to blow said money on food, booze, or other fleeting stuff. Seldom do most such gamblers go and put it in the bank or pay for college with the winnings. But some gamblers do. And I almost hesitate to call them gamblers. But there does exist a certain type of person who looks at going into a casino and, say, sitting down at a blackjack table in a different way. These people are called advantaged players. That's what the casinos call them, and that's what they call themselves. They study a casino game that's predicated on some form of randomness, like what card comes up next, determine who wins. And they look for ways to use their brains to figure out how to win, to play the game a certain way in which they put the odds in their favor. I'm sure you've heard of like card counters or something, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Perfect example. The casino sets the rules which, by the way, are set to put the odds in the casino's favor. And these people play by them, but they pay more attention than the average gambler and are actually able to flip the odds. So the odds are in their favor. It's still a game of chance, but they're more likely to win. And in fact, they can actually even calculate their edge in some cases. So these are professionals. And I've spoken with some professional gamblers or advantage players. They do, in fact, store that wealth and use it to invest in the things they need or want to make their life better. And this is a little foreshadowing of what is to come on this podcast and in this book. We will learn to leverage our minds, to work smarter, learn the rules of the game well enough that we can produce not quick wins, not fleeting profits that are lost on the next trade, but so we can produce a consistent income stream that truly grows wealth, that enriches our lives with the important things that we invest that temporary store of wealth we call money in. We use our power within us to build a wonderful life. Though, of course, we use outside forces to help us as well. Information, trading tools, expert analysis. But we are the ones in control. Some people that I know are financial planners. Let's talk about financial planners for a minute. A lot of the financial planners I know, most of them, heck, maybe all of them, that I can think of right now anyway, are pretty nice guys, which I guess you have to be. Sales is part of that thing. You got to be pretty likable, but they're experts in finance. Do they care about you? Honestly, yeah, they probably do, right? Like I said, most of them are like, all the ones that I know are really good people, nice guys or gals, whatever. Maybe some of them don't. Who knows? Maybe some of them just like, yeah, here's your mutual fund. I'm going to get my commission. I'm going to play golf. I'm sure there's some of that goes around. There's some of that in every profession. But let's assume your financial planner is a great guy who really likes you. Here's my next question. Who cares more about your money than you? Is it your financial planner? I got to get some sound effects if I'm going to do this podcast thing, right? Got to get some of those crazy whistles, the buzzer, applaud, laugh track. Who cares more about your money than you do? Is it your financial planner? Buzz. No, it's not. Nobody cares more about your money than you do because you need it. You need that store of wealth to invest in these things that are the important things in life. Your financial planner, he or she, they have their dreams. They have their needs, their obligations and opportunities. They're different from yours. Everyone has different dreams, needs, obligations, opportunities, these deep-seated desires. Every individual has their own individual need for these things. If you take one thing away from today's podcast, I hope that it's to think about what is important to you. And there's a reason for this, right? It's because if I'm going to do this podcast experiment for a year, whatever it takes, I want you to get something out of it. And in order to do that, you have to have the right mindset. I mean, you really do. Like, there's just no way around it. And you have to be able to visualize a successful future with this, right? You're doing something very important for yourself and your family or the people around you. One of the things that I like to do is say, think about yourself 3 years from now, okay? And think back to today. Think back to the time that you listened to this podcast episode. And imagine that you think, man, I really did it. I listened to Dan that day, and I got myself in the right frame of mind, and I took these steps. Like, what does that look like? And future you looking back, what did you put in to get to that point? You kind of have to visualize it. And some people call that manifesting, right? Like you think about it and you make it happen. And is this spiritual or whatever kind of stuff? No, not really. That's not really what manifesting is. It's getting yourself into the right mindset where you can visualize, where you just naturally make these decisions that lead to this thing happening. In 1937, there was a book written called Think and Grow Rich. It was written by a guy named Napoleon Hill. So the story with it is, and I think he mentions this in the book, I read it a long time ago, at least the lore of the book is that Andrew Carnegie, who was like the Steel, he started the company that ultimately became U.S. Steel. I think that was after J.P. Morgan took it over, bought him out. But Andrew Carnegie tried to incent Napoleon Hill to write this book, Think and Grow Rich, to help individuals who had the entrepreneurial spirit to think the right way so that you could grow rich, so that you could build wealth. And there's like 13 principles of success in that book that are the things that lead to being able to think and turn those thoughts into becoming wealthier. But you know what? Most of it just really has to do with mindset and attitude, especially a positive attitude and visualizing it. And, there's a whole chapter about manifesting. It's kind of like there's a movie out there also called The Secret. It's kind of a documentary sort of thing. And they have all these people who, I don't know, I think some of them you would call like self-help gurus and such. And people who know about what it takes to make something happen, to make something work, to be successful, whatever you want to call it, whatever your visualization, need, deep-seated desire is, right? And they call it The Secret because after interviewing all these people, they kind of found what the secret is to this thing we call success or wealth or company building or charity building or whatever the goal is. What is the secret? And the secret, turns out, is really just a positive attitude. And there's lots of people who help you with this. This is something that most people can't do alone. I know for me, I had a turning point probably in about 2016 or so where a light bulb just went off after talking to some people who maybe they didn't even see themselves as like a coach or anything like that, but turned me on to all these different things, the way to think differently. Like I didn't change. I have a little more gray hair now, but the thing that changed was my mind. And these people, whether we call them life coaches or self-help gurus or whatever it is, in some ways, that's kind of my role. I mean, it's definitely my role to be the tactical and strategic coach, the educational coach, to share the things that I learned over my 30 years of doing this in the options world and to share them with you so that you can get really good at it. But in order to do that, I feel it benefits you the most if I also share these other things that I learned. Maybe you might call them soft skills of just having the right mindset and being able to think about it the right way. In this podcast, over the next year or however long it takes to complete this book, and thus this podcast project, I'm going to share a lot of strategy and tactics and methods and things to do to use options for investing, specifically covered calls and cash secured puts to build wealth faster. And it takes work. It takes time. I mean, not a lot of time, but some. do you care enough about your hopes and dreams to stick with it? Even if your financial advisor loves you and he or she puts in the effort to teach him or herself to learn how to use the investing strategies that this podcast will be centering around. Honestly, the way the fee structures work with most advisors when it comes to overlaying option strategies on top of the investments, it's not worth it for them to even do it. I mean, sure, when you're good at it and you're in the groove, it takes 5-10 minutes. I've been tracking my time lately. I want to say today it might have took me about 12 minutes to go through and look at all my covered call and cash secured put trades. Sure, it's not going to take your financial advisor a long time, but you're not your financial advisor's only client. Are you your financial advisor's favorite client? Maybe you are, but it's just not worth it for them to do it, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. Look, so here's the thing. You are the person who cares the most about your money, and you are therefore in control. You can choose to give control to somebody who doesn't care as much, or you can choose to harness that control and own it, because you can do it. You got that power within you. And I'm going to tell you what. I heard this phrase recently, and it made a lot of sense to me. If you bring forth that which is within you, then that which is within you will be your salvation. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, then that which is within you will destroy you. You've got that power inside yourself, and you can use it. Now, obviously, this is notwithstanding the fact that everyone starts out at different points, different socioeconomic levels, different skills that come natural or that are challenging for them, different situations, handicaps, hurdles. But wherever you are, you can move towards that point. So together, let's dream and manifest. And the next episode, we're going to talk about how wealth is built in the equity market. We're going to start talking a lot about stocks and compound interest and a lot of these kind of things, how to generate alpha to be able to outperform the market. Now, I strive to release one of these episodes once a week, and there's a pretty good chance I'll be able to do that. Maybe take a week here or there off, but you're going to get an episode about once a week. So that's what I have in store for the next one. The one after that, we're going to start diving right into derivatives and covered calls and cash secured puts and all that kind of stuff, and really get into the tactics and strategies. And as we progress, we're going to get deeper and deeper into it, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be powerful. So all that said, I will see you next time. Trade smart.
Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. Before buying or selling an option, read characteristics and risks of standardized options. A link is provided in the show notes. To learn more about your host, Dan Passarelli, please visit markettaker.com.